for an interview, and I was sitting down, and I said, well, tell me about yourself, you know, and he said, well, I'm actually an attorney. He's got a law degree. He did the commencement speech at his graduation for the Golden Gate University. He's an arbitrator with FINRA. I said, FINRA, isn't that the financial industry a regulatory agency? And he says, yeah. And I said, wow. You know, and he said, yeah, and I also have this book, you know, and I wrote this book, and I'm not promoting my book, and it talks about full life balance. And as he was telling me this, and as amazed as I was while he was telling me about his book and his background, I said to myself, is this guy in the right place? You want to come to become one of my realtors? Well, I was honored that after our talks and, you know, understanding more about him and why he's also part of real estate, and to learn that he wanted to be a part of my team was also an honor, and hearing more about him and learning more about him and even reading his book, I just knew that I had to have him come and share with all of you here, because it was certainly an impact to me, and I hope that Mr. William Wesley does an impact to you all. So let's give William Wesley a big round of applause. William, thank you for being here.
Good morning. The video was perfect because I have a sore throat. And I have 3 speaking events today, but I learned from a great speaker, the most important speaking event is the one you're doing. So I'm going to give you my entire throat, and I'll just do sign language for the rest of it. Once. When we were doing that show, years ago, I've done a little bit of television, and we were doing the show, and I'm sitting there. If you notice at the beginning, I sort of look over. And the reason I look over is they have 3 cameras, and these cameras are moving remotely. There are no cameramen. I said, what happened to the cameramen? And it has to do with technology and the development of our society and all of that. And what I began to think about as I was doing the show was, my mission has to be to continue to tell folks what I've learned and all of that for a purely selfish reason, because I actually feel good when I make you feel good. But there's this other reason. There are some changes happening in our environment, in our culture, in our society, that cause a lot of us to think we have to be something other than what we are. And I'm here to tell you that we don't. You have to be the best Margaret you are. You have to be the best Jason. We do not have to imitate the folks on reality TV. And a lot of us get that, but our children may not get that. And so our mission as parents and grandparents is to make sure we communicate to those we care about that being you is okay. But you know what? You can be a little better every day in each one of your categories. And that's full life balance. So I want you to think back with me, if you would. Think back to when you were a kid and you were going to do all that stuff. You're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an astronaut, an Indian chief, all of that stuff, right? And then a little bit later, as a teenager, you said, I was going to do this, I was going to go here, I was going to go here, I was going to be this, I was going to see these places. Then later, as a young adult, I was going to make this amount of money, I was going to have all of these things. Well, have you done that? Have you become that? If you're like most folks, the answer is no. And it's not because these dreams were crazy. It's because you stopped believing in the dreams. When I went through my change, my epiphany, when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be a businessman. I knew I wanted to have a law degree. I knew I wanted to play the guitar. I knew, right, there are a lot of things I knew I wanted to do. I've done a lot of those. But I'm a young man. And I plan to do a lot more. Nothing is out of range. If someone else has done it, I can do it. And I might not want to be a brain surgeon, and I might not want to take the time to do that. But you get my point. So, full life balance says, can you and I put together specific things we do every day, and you can. So we talked about the spiritual key, and I want to spend a moment there. I'm not saying you have to be Christian, or Islamic, or Buddhist, or an atheist, or an agnostic. If you are Christian, insert your spirituality in that key. If you're a Buddhist, insert yours there. If you're agnostic, if you don't believe there's a God, or if you don't believe you can prove there's a God, use nature. Go to the beach. Look at the waves for 30 minutes. Go to the redwood forest. The goal of spirituality, as I define it, and this is not an all-encompassing definition, but what came up for me is this. Spirituality, by my definition, is to do good, be good, and show others by your example the power of goodness. Now that doesn't violate anyone's religion, unless you're worshiping the devil, right? Don't do good, don't do good. So do good, be good, and show others by your example. Now, but again, if you don't believe in any of that stuff, just go to the beach and chill. Because the goal there is to just relax and to just develop perspective and realize as you look at the sand of the millions and millions of grains, you're one of these little grains. You're an important grain, but you're still one of the grains. And you're interrelated with all these other grains. So what other things can we do in the course of the day to affect our spirituality? Well, there are several things. One, I look for the good. I meet people. I look for the good in people. If you tell me you do something, I believe it. I'm not naive. You have my trust until and when you earn my distrust. But I would rather believe you and look for good in you than look for bad. That sounds very simple, but in a cynical environment, a lot of us discount the things we do and discount what other people tell us. And when you become cynical, then you lose belief. And when you lose belief, you become jaded. And when you become jaded, you're not happy. Thank you. This is cold. Thank you. Second, try to avoid the mind and body traps that lie in your way. Some of these folks are in your family. You tell them you want to do something, they will tell you every reason why you can't, because they don't believe they can. But they're your family, so you can't shoot them. But keep them in your family. Just sometimes don't drop all your dreams in front of them. Share your dreams with people who dream. If you have a dream, share it with me. I'll listen. And find people like me who listen and support your dream, whatever it is. Do not put negative things in your system at the end of your day. The biggest, thank you, the biggest negative thing most of us use every night is the what? What in particular? The news. There is no good news. It wouldn't sell. It's the bad news. Who raped who shot who stole from you, who. And then you put that in your subconscious. And then you spend 8 hours with your subconscious processing the last thing you heard. No wonder some of us wake up anxious and scared and paranoid and defensive. I don't watch the news. I know we're evil to each other, and I can't avoid it, but I won't sit there and let you just pump it into me. I have enough of you that will tell me, did you hear about this? I'm like, okay. But I'm not going to do that to myself. When I did a 10-day meditation, when I was writing the spiritual section, and we're almost done with that section, meditation, you focus on a particular part or a particular thing. For me, it was breathing. As I breathed, I began to focus on my breath, on the miracle of air coming in, going into my lungs, bringing oxygen into my capillaries and doing all that stuff, and then going back out. And my conscious mind focused on that. My subconscious mind began to release, and I began to think about all kinds of things. And I began to understand the power of the subconscious mind. It works when you don't know it. I can have a problem, think about it, go to bed, wake up and have the answer. That's because the subconscious mind was always working. You get it? You do it all the time. I do it all the time. Imagine me watching the news and a 6-year-old was raped, and that's the last thing I heard. And that's on my mind the entire night. That can't be good. The physical key we talked about every day, making sure you get up and do something physical. It takes energy to be successful. Years ago, I was watching Ronald Reagan run for president, and he was, 70-something years old. And for 2 years, he was going for like 18 hours a day. Now that always fascinated me. How do you go 18 hours a day, every single day? How does a 98-pound woman lift the car off of her child, right? What causes people to have that kind of endurance and strength? And I realized I have that endurance and strength, and we all do. So when people ask me, how did you get your law degree and your MBA and start your business and all that? Well, I don't have a lot of TV time. I watch the Niners, but sometimes I record them. I watch the Giants, but sometimes I record it. But I don't give them 8 or 10 hours of my day, because I have the same time you have. I have the same strength you have. And there are people who've done way more than I've even dreamed. So I'm not standing here saying, I got it. I'm standing here saying, I'm trying to be a little bit better every day, and I'm trying to reach my goals. My goal is to be the best William Wesley. And he's actually okay, because he's been blessed to be a William Wesley. And you're okay. But you can't sit there and say, it's all done and I'm perfect, because that leads to the stuff you see on TV, where Judge Judy sits there and says, why didn't you pay back the loan? And the guy says, on TV, as an adult, well, I borrowed the money from him, but he dates my sister, and they had a fight, therefore I'm not going to pay him back. And she looks at him like, does that make any sense? And he's standing there, right? That's because some people are getting away from understanding what they are. Back to the physical key. So, get up in the morning and stretch. Develop the basics. The basics are this: rest, diet, water, exercise. You've got to have that in some good formula in your life every day. A certain amount of rest, a certain amount of water, great diet, and exercise. But past that, we're humans, and we like to release endorphins and dopamine. Those are the drugs we personally release inside of our system to make us feel good, right? When you remember you're a little kid, I didn't get cold till I was like 15. When I was a little kid, I was always running and jumping, and I was always fantasizing. Remember, as a little kid, you were always running around. Remember, you always felt sort of high? Do you remember that? You just felt good. You didn't know it was high. You just felt good, and you were doing 2 key things to release it. One was physical activity. One was physical activity. 2 was fantasy. In the course of your day, you should have some fantasy. In the course of your day, you should have some physical activity. Me, I get my stretch, but every week I play tennis. in the course of playing tennis, I release endorphins and dopamine, and I feel good, right? But I also do things to continue to feel good. I like to play chess. I like to read books. I like to watch movies. I like to go to plays. I like to play with my kids. Well, I don't play with them, they're adults. I like to play with my grandkids. I joke with my kids, and now and then we laugh. And that releases it. The problem becomes when we use the release of those things as a substitute for other things. Here's an example. Lottery tickets. Ever bought a lottery ticket? I'm the only one who bought a lottery ticket. Okay. What happens before you buy it? What do you think before you buy it? And when you say, hope I win, be more specific. What are you actually hoping for? And then, because it's not money, what is it? It's the things you're going to do with it, right? Now, remember when you buy the ticket, how do you think? It's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And go back with me. Feel that feeling. Don't you feel real good when you're fantasizing about what you're going to do with your lottery ticket winnings? That's okay. That's healthy. But there are people who do this every day with all of their money. And they're doing it to escape reality. They spend the entire time drugged up on their personal drugs. And when that stops working, they add other things like alcohol and real drugs. Facebook is a perfect example. They're doing studies right now about how teenagers react, dopamine and endorphins, when they get a like. Especially when they get a lot of likes. But if they don't get a like, it's a personal slap in the face. And they actually feel somewhat clinically depressed. And that's why it's so important for us to shape what we are and define it in other means. Last thing, the physical key, self-preservation. Every year, go to the doctor and be checked out. Every day, do something to keep your body in shape. Listen to what your body tells you. I went to my youngest daughter was in a kindergarten. They went to a farm, and we went to the farm, and there was a cow on the farm, and on this cow went over to this post that had this big white thing, and it was like hooked in a loop, and it was hanging there, and the cow went there and licked it. And I asked the farmer, what in the world was that? And he said, that's a cow lick. It's a block of salt. Now, cows won't go and lick that until they get hypertension. They won't go and lick that until they get diabetes. Humans are the only ones that do that. We need salt, we need sugar, we need certain things. Full Life Balance says, can we establish a balance to where we don't eat the bag of chips, we eat some of the chips. I have chips, I have sweets. My body's in balance, so when I want something sweet, I can eat it. But I don't get the tub of ice cream and eat it all. It's just about moderation. The emotional key, almost done. Emotional key, we are not perfect. None of us are, none of us will be, but we can be the perfect us and become better us's. But if we do something that would cause us to ask for forgiveness, it's important that we have the ability to forgive someone else. I am a man. I'm lucky enough to be married to the right woman. But in the course of this marriage, there have been a time or two where I had a discussion with my wife. And at the moment of that discussion, I was absolutely convinced I was absolutely correct. And a few moments later, as I walked away and reflected on this intense but perfect discussion I had had, I realized I was absolutely wrong and absolutely incorrect. Now, I'm a man, so sometimes our ego and our testosterone and our lack of intellectual quickness when it comes to arguing with women. We are not as quick as they are. They can do things to us that we're like, but I was, right? And so anyway, so we put up our ego and say, I'm gonna win this argument. And then, if you're lucky, and women do it too, none of us are perfect, so none of us are always right. Now and then, I've been able to step back and say, wait a minute, that was wrong. And I went up to my wife and said, I'm sorry. Can we reset or do it again or whatever? There have been times I've said something that I thought to be innocuous. It wasn't a big deal. I thought I said it the right way. Apparently I didn't, because her response was different. But then I go after her response and we do this thing. And sometimes I have to step back and say, wait a minute, I said that wrong. My point is this: no matter how old you are, no matter how male you are, no matter how female you are, no matter how much counseling you've had, you're going to be wrong and you're going to be right. And the other person has the right to be wrong and be right. And when those things happen, sometimes right is not that important. I've decided I'm going down the road with this woman. So what's most important is that's my wife. And what do I get, $20 from that? So anyway, my point is forgive yourself, forgive the other person, and be open. Professional key, just work harder and smarter to be all you can be. It's like the Army thing. Try to be the best you want to be. There are folks driving buses right now. We need buses. They take millions of people across the world. If a person doesn't want, I had a professor, the late Joe Furick. Joe Furick said this: you will do what you do until you want to do something else more than what you do. That sounds very simple, but he called it the theory of relative wants. Relative wants simply means, an example, if I'm a bus driver, and all day I complain about being a bus driver, well, if I've been a bus driver more than a couple of weeks, and if I didn't just fall from the sky, and the only job available was bus driver, and I took that job, because I know we need money, but if I've been a bus driver 5, 6, 7, 9 years, you know what? I'm a bus driver because I want to be a bus driver. Because if I wanted to do something else more than drive the bus, I'd still drive the bus, but I'd take the courses, get the training, or do whatever, using some of the money from driving the bus to become the thing I say I want to be. And as long as bus driving is here, and this other thing is here in terms of my want scale, I'll always drive the bus. So the question becomes, either decide you want to drive the bus and be the best bus driver you can be, or decide you don't and be the best bus driver you can be until you become the other thing. But stop the freaking complaining. So sometimes I'll get in an elevator with business people such as yourselves, and sometimes I just say, I go for it. I'll say, good morning, especially on a Monday. It's Monday. Yeah. Yes. This is called, I don't do that part, right? But this is called Monday. And what I found, I talk about it in my book, is this, and we'll wrap up on the charitable. I'm 3 minutes away. A lot of us, until we get it, live our lives this way. So let's say it starts on Monday. And how do we feel about Mondays? Right? Thank you for being honest. Right? So some folks hate Mondays. And they tell everyone they meet that they hate Mondays. Right? So here they go. They get up, they start the day, and they're awful on Monday. And then they sort of make it to Tuesday. And Tuesday's a little better because it's not Monday and it's closer to Wednesday. And then they hit Wednesday, and Wednesday is hump day. And I've never seen this hump or got a hump on hump day, but this is hump day, right? Which means I'm halfway through and I'm gonna make it now. Then Thursday feels a little bit better because Thursday's closest to what? And then Friday comes and they've written poems and prayers and they thank God for it and everything. Not for these other days, but just for Friday. God gets thanked for Friday. Then the party happens or whatever, and then there's Saturday. And then Saturday is cool because there's no responsibilities and you make it through Saturday. That's a great day. Then Sunday. Sunday's okay until about 3 or 4 because then you begin to think about Monday. So if you look at it, you've blown Monday psychologically, you've blown Tuesday, you wasted half a Wednesday, you begin to live on Thursday, you apparently, quote, live on Friday, Saturday, and half a Sunday. A person who lives and thinks this way lives about 4.5 days a week. I have all days. Every day is a good day. I have 365 days a year. So do you. I don't have bad days. I've had some bad days. I lost my mom. I lost my dad. I lost my grandma. Those were bad days, and they feel bad for a bit. But other than that, I like rain, I like sunshine. This is it. We may go somewhere else after this. I don't know. There are folks who have those beliefs, and that's wonderful. But right now, this moment, me talking to you, is the only thing I really have. And my memories. Why would I waste that and say, dang it, Monday? Why would I waste that? It doesn't make sense to me. I hope it doesn't make sense to you. Okay, so that professional key, I sort of bled back into the emotional key. But that's key for professional, because what are you going to do? Then once you decide what you're going to do, become that. Work harder and smarter to become that. And find out and have the discipline and the honesty with yourself to become it. Then the last key is this. Well, last thing on the professional key. You know who Richard Williams is? You know who Venus Williams is? And Serena Williams? Well, their father is Richard Williams, and my wife and I are big tennis fans. So we go to Stanford every, what is it, March, April, and we see the tall family tennis and the tournament. It's the Bank of the West Classic. Anyway, a couple of years ago, when I just finished the book, I was able to sit knee to knee with Richard Williams, and I wanted to present him the book and present a couple with Venus and Serena. I didn't get a chance to talk with him or meet him, but I had been around him the year before, and then I was able to sit down and talk with him. And we spent 15 minutes together. And it wasn't 15 minutes to sell my book. It was 15 minutes that allowed me to ask him a couple of questions. And my questions were this, because I have daughters, and I was trying to figure what he had done with these young ladies out of Compton, out of the projects, to do what they have done. Now, yes, they're incredible athletes, but it takes a lot more than being an incredible athlete to play at that level psychologically, let alone the interviews. And so we began to talk about the interviews. Richard Williams said this. He said, one, I wasn't going to expose them to all those other kids and all that other crap that little black kids would have to go to playing a sport that's traditionally all white. I didn't think they were ready for the racism and things that they would experience. So he kept them out of the tournaments, right? Because he said, I'm going to build them up and get them ready before I have to expose them to that. And they get it now, and they're professionals. Imagine little girls. So I said, wow, that was brilliant. But two, and this is in reference to professional, which you gave me more. He said, one thing I do. He said, I would film them when they were like 9 and 10, playing against each other. And I would have this commentary. Serena hits a great shot. Venus hits a great shot back. And he did this whole thing. And he said, after I would finish, and he had this big Panasonic camcorder with a big VHS tape. And he said, I would sit there and I would interview them. And he'd say, Serena, tell me about your match. And tell me about Venus. And he taught them, one, never talk bad about your sister. That's why when you see them interview, even when they were 14, 15, and 16, you'll never hear Serena say anything bad about Venus, or vice versa, because they are family and they have to stay together. But two, what he taught me was practice and discipline. If you listen to their interviews, and even at 14 and 15 and 16, their interviews, the announcer would say, so what you're saying is, and And they said, no, what I'm saying is this. He taught them never let someone else say what you're saying. Now, I'm only bringing that example up because you might look at those folks 20 years ago and say they have poor economic circumstance and poor cultural environments, and therefore they will never make it. Full life balance, history, David and Goliath, Vietnamese versus the U.S. Army, right? Afghan against the Russians. History is full of examples where people with presidents who've lost a parent before age 15. There are more presidents who've lost parents. If you take another statistical group of 40, 50 men who are successful, we have a huge number of presidents compared to that group who lost parents at an early age. So sometimes things happen to folks that cause folks to develop things. These things that they develop become strengths, rituals, and processes that allow them to be successful. You folks may not need any of that. You might have all the resources. The only question is, whether you do it. I close on this note. When I was a kid, none of us could go to camp. We had heard about camp, and we heard people had fantastic adventures. And there were 6 of us. And if 6 couldn't go, 1 wasn't going. And we had lower income at that time. And one year, there was an organization that allowed little poor kids to go to camp. And I was able to go to the Pythian Youth Camp in the Sequoia National Forest. And I ate marshmallows, I rode horses, I got scared by ghost stories. We had bats, we sat around campfires, we met kids from all different places. After 2 weeks, I came back home, and it was like this extended Disneyland. It was the most incredible experience of my young life. The people who made that happen were the Guardsmen. And to this day, I will always mention this group. When I can, I buy Christmas trees from those folks because they do what I've begun to live my life to do. And that is part of my life. And full life balance is part of your life should be give back. So give back because the world needs it. The other part, as I mentioned on the show, give back also makes you feel good and gets you out of yourself because your stuff is not that heavy. Everybody's going through this. We're more alike than not alike. We're all going through some stuff. Step back for a minute and give back to other folks. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. William Wesley, everyone. Now you guys know why I have to have William come here? I tell you, William, I'm going to miss Dave Clark, Sal Castaneda, Frank Somerville. I'm going to miss all these people because I'm never watching the news again. Never watching the news again. Thank you. I'm not watching CSI. I'm not going to watch any of that bad stuff anymore. No wonder I wake up this way. Community announcements at the center of the room.